No one wants to F you, and that is your power. By J.R. Table of Contents: Hormones, Nature, Other Apes, The Monkey Paw, Childbearing Dreams, Acceptance, Bibliography. Yes, we are all human. If you are reading if you are male, in some cases, disappointed. Popular males have the most offspring. Remarkably, humans are most see amongst human males as well. Even Justin Bieber. 1960s. The monkey paw. Are you familiar with the concept of the monkey's paw? The monkey's paw was an evil item that granted a wish for each finger of the mummified monkey's hand. Unfortunately, the user had to undergo traumatic events in order for the wishes to be granted. The results were so devastating to the user that it would have been far better not to wish for those things to begin with. Wish you had it all. Why don't we dive into some of the unfavorable outcomes that could transpire had our popularity been different? Let's imagine that your whole life was spent being irresistible to suitors. Chances are you would have gone through emotional fatigue. You also would be burdened with heavy guilt by inadvertently breaking countless suitors' hearts in the process. Why do I say this? Well, for one thing, try being emailed by 1,000 people each second. Are you going to read them all? I'm betting that you would probably avoid checking your inbox regularly due to the sheer volume of messages. Now what if every single message was the same: "Hi, I like you"? I'm betting that at that point you would probably never check that inbox again. Likewise, when it comes to dating, a plethora of choices could seem exhausting for someone and might result in them withdrawing themselves socially, so as to avoid the harassment of romantic bombardments. Here is another aspect of that scenario: change. People tend to come and go during life. Rarely does someone spend their entire life within the same neighborhood yet alone city. Your elementary school love might not attend your middle school, and your middle school suitor might not attend your high school. Then the most probable scenario of all, your high school suitor or yourself, wind up going off to different colleges. These things are very common, and if one is to love openly and deeply, they would know the utter pain to be experienced by losing someone that was your everything. If you loved hard, then you experienced cruel suffering, over and over again. Maybe those scenarios might not be unwanted issues for you, but let's talk about relationship complications. Our entire sexual urge comes from the biological need to procreate, that is, to reproduce or create a child. You may not want to raise a child, but the mere fact that your body has sexual urges implies that you are ready to use your reproductive organs to manufacture one. As a matter of fact, most children that were born throughout history were unplanned, meaning that the parents of most children that were ever born did not expect to create said child before it transpired. That means that most of us born today were accidentally conceived. Nature has it that in the heat of sexual contact, your rational mind must take a back seat so that the mating process could begin and be completed. Imagine if it were not this way, then everyone would have had the chance to stop themselves before engaging in procreation, resulting in the majority of the population not being born. It is extremely rare for someone to take on the burden of carrying a child, birthing it, and then dedicating 18 consecutive years towards helping that child survive into adulthood. Now let's add the premise: what if you were irresistible to the opposite sex during the beginning of your fertility phase? If there were no contraceptives, or if you were not aware of them, then you would have been an unwitting parent in your early teens. Is that such a bad thing? Let's get into it. Childbearing. Childbearing in and of itself simply means giving birth to a child, but in this case, we're going to cover the pregnancy and the child rearing. Only a few days after conception, the female becomes nauseous. This is referred to as morning sickness. This is simply one of the symptoms of being pregnant. From this moment on, the female will continue to experience more and more discomfort as her stomach swells for 9 months, until she gives birth. Giving birth in itself is an arduous process, sometimes resulting in the death of the female. Therefore, getting pregnant is no easy matter and should be seriously thought about and planned beforehand. However, the fact that most children are born into the world unplanned, means that regardless of the knowledge of this arduous process, it still happens accidentally the majority of the time. On the other hand, the Office of National Statistics in the UK reported that for the first time in recorded history, 50% of women aged 30 do not have children. The study started in the 1920s, therefore, there is proof that people are deliberately avoiding this discomfort, but what else is involved in having a child? Let's talk about child vulnerability. According to UNICEF, child mortality was 1 out of 11 in the year 1990. In the year 2020, that statistic has dropped to 1 out of 27, which is a 67% drop in deaths of children under 5 years old. However, children are still very vulnerable and can be fatally hurt even just wandering around. Think about celebrities like Mike Tyson, whose toddler daughter got strangled by a treadmill's power cord. That's just one example. Children have fallen down staircases, died from heat after being left in a car for too long, and even drowned in swimming pools, to say the least. One common cause of death used to be unintentional smothering, where the parents accidentally smother the infant to death while sleeping. These are certainly tragic events that are tremendously sad but also stand to illustrate the vulnerability of children. We didn't even mention another truly tragic case of child mortality: sickness. According to the WHO, every year an estimated 400,000 children are diagnosed with cancer. Just imagine the agony of doing all that you can to care for a child, only to have them die of cancer. The pain must be unimaginable for the parent, knowing that nothing they could do could prevent this fatal predicament. The videos of these children with cancer are inspiring to all, since the children seem bright and naive to the sadness of their demise. It's truly heartbreaking. Now let's say that none of this occurs with your accidental pregnancy as an irresistible young teen. Congratulations, you defeated the odds and gave birth to a healthy child. However, at your current age, every waking moment must now center around the comfort of this infant. Your schooling must take a back seat to this new life that demands your love and care. Your entire future plans must now shift because your priority is now the future of this helpless infant. You now are frantic to make as many sacrifices to your life to set this child up for success. This mindset is also the responsibility of the male who shares the DNA of the child. Once a male is responsible for a child's DNA, he is legally bound to make child support payments to provide for said child. So let's say that you are a young teen male and you've accidentally fathered at least one child. Now you must find the funds to pay child support for this child, otherwise you would be sent to jail. This means that your schooling must take a back seat, as well as any future plans you had for yourself, because for the next 18 years, you are financially responsible for this child. Many males wind up in jail for not being able to pay child support, and in those cases the government then steps in and provides financially for the child. Upon leaving jail, the male is once again responsible, otherwise he would be returned to said condition. All of this to ensure the successful survival of a child before adulthood. However, most children don't grow up to be successful or happy themselves. Life is a total surprise and not one that could be predicted. How do you feel about being irresistible to the opposite sex now? Not all that it was chalked up to be now, is it? So now that we see some of the issues that arise from being young and attractive, let's look at some possibilities that could be pursued by someone without that responsibility. Dreams. Are you someone who works from your laptop? Maybe your company allows you to do virtual online conferences once a week and to work from home the rest of the time, or maybe you are a contract worker who is hired to provide a service digitally. Maybe you are a digital entrepreneur who does e-commerce or a stock trader. In any case, the world is becoming more and more digital. Long gone are the days where every worker had to sit in a cubicle and toil away from 9 to 5. Things have opened up a bit, in large part due to COVID-19, but the trend of working from home had already begun a few years prior. Just a few decades ago, selling anything online was a rarity. Most online stores were just the ordering menu of an actual physical store. Storefronts were mandatory. People spent upwards of $1 million to open a small store in a popular mall, hoping that their flyers and the store's sign would attract visitors who would become customers. Nowadays, it would be rare for an individual to have not bought something online. The internet went from being niche to being the majority of people's social life. Now the individual has the power to sell anything they want from the tip of their fingertips. Want to draw clients from a certain niche? Simply comment on a page for such a niche and grow in popularity. A business page can be generated in sheer minutes and an e-commerce store to go with it. Marketing is indeed the hardest part of making a sale, but instead of printing flyers, one can freely create media profiles and spam links to your promotional videos to anyone anywhere. Hence, the need to physically be somewhere where you don't want to, is becoming less and less of a mandatory issue. Of course, people will always be needed in the service and medical fields, but on the whole, the world has become a freer place, business-wise. What if you were an e-commerce business person and you decided that you did not want to stay in your current home? What if you had a family? Do you think you could just pick up and head out to an exotic destination? Chances are this move would have to be well planned and scheduled around the children's schooling and possibly your significant other's work schedule. Changing your location could be detrimental to your family's stability and therefore, would have to be a calculated risk to undergo. Let's say that house prices were a bit too pricey for your tastes. If you had a family to think about, you would sacrifice everything to get them situated in a home in a good school district. This might mean an unfavorable loan that might take you over 30 years to pay off, just to make sure that your family felt stable, secure and rooted into their community. Or let's say that you decided to rent instead. Renting a family home is not cheap and might wind up being more expensive in the long run. Now let's imagine that there was no family. It's just you. Do you feel that? It's called freedom. Being a digital nomad means that you could work from anywhere at any time. No one can force you to take on an expensive mortgage loan or an expensive rent. You could live in a van for all you care. The world is literally now your oyster. The possibilities are endless. Too cold in the winter? Spend those months in a tropical climate instead. Maybe pick up a new language while you're at it, sipping a tropical drink on a beach somewhere while working. Too hot in the summer? Why not spend time somewhere cooler? Maybe up in the mountains somewhere. The bottom line is that not every curse is negative. Not every half-filled glass is half empty. If life gave you lemons, why not enjoy a nice chilled glass of lemonade? Always wanted to learn a new language? Learn a new martial art? New dance style? How about taking on massive projects like building a recreation van? Learning a new skill? How about dangerous hobbies? Or finally joining a band? Close your eyes and think of all of the things you wouldn't be able to do if you had a demanding family life. Now open them. You're welcome. Now do them. We started this journey talking about our hormones and even that could be taken care of. Pretty soon from now you will be able to build